In the first 6 games of their 2018 NBA playoffs first-round series against the Toronto Raptors, the Wizards have been carried by their stars. Wall and Bradley Beal have each shined at times, and the team hoped it would get more out of its third star, Otto Porter, in the final 2 games of the series to help them pull an upset over the top seed in the East. That help from someone beyond Wall and Beal is going to have to come from somewhere else now. Otto Porter is undergoing a small procedure and will miss at least Game 6 on Friday and a potential Game 7 on Sunday, if the series lasts that long, according to Candace Buckner of The Washington Post. Porter has struggled in the first 5 games against the Raptors, averaging 10.0 points, 5.0 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and 1.2 steals per game, and many theorized he was playing through injury. He suffered a contusion in the Wizards' Game 5 loss and now will not have the opportunity to improve his numbers in the final 2 games. As NBC Sports Washington, Wizards digital producer Chase Hughes notes, this presents an opportunity for Kelly Oubre to step up in Porter's absence. Time for Oubre to step up. Big loss for the Wizards. https://t.co/GoPHIP, Chase Hughes, at Chase Hughes RBC's, April 27, 2018. Oubre has also had his share of struggles this offseason, as he's shooting just 18.8% from beyond the arc in 5 games so far. While the Wizards will look to Oubre, along with fellow starters Marcin Gortat and Markieff Morris, to help pick up the scoring slack, much of the burden will likely fall on the shoulders of the Wizards' All-Stars. Wall and Beal have averaged a combined 48.0 points per game through 5 games, and that number will likely have to go up if the Wizards are going to find themselves advancing to the next round. More Wizards vs. Raptors news. The Wizards may be surprised at their first-round exit to the Toronto Raptors, but exactly how they perished should not be surprising at all. Their shortcomings were familiar and indicative of their biggest problems from this season and from yesteryear. Though Markieff Morris said the Wizards were the better team in the fallout of their Game 6 loss on Friday night, there are a handful of reasons to argue otherwise. Most notably, it was the Raptors' depth that helped carry them past Washington and into the second round. The whole series demonstrated this fact. Raptors were missing point guard Fred VanVleet, one of the NBA's best bench players, yet they still rolled a deeper rotation than the Wizards, and with impressive success, VanVleet's replacement, Delon Wright, scored 18 points in both Game 1 and 5 and shot 46.7% from 3 in the series. CJ Miles scored a combined 30 points in the first 2 games to help lead the Raptors to a 2-0 series lead. Other bench players like Pascal Siakam and Jakob Poeltl did their part, rebounding the ball and scoring when needed with efficiency. Game 6 was a perfect example of their depth advantage. While Wall and Bradley Beal each logged 40-plus minutes, the Raptors' star guards DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry played 33 and 31 minutes, respectively, in a playoff game, a closeout game. "You'll never expect your starting backcourt to do that," Lowry said of his and DeRozan's minutes, "but that's how our team is built. On any given night our bench can do that. There's been nights where I'd only play 24 minutes. Throughout the season, our bench has won games." The Wizards now enter the offseason with questions about their depth. The absence of Otto Porter, who had a minor procedure on his left leg in the hours before Game 6, did not tell the entire story. Wall and Beal scored 30 of the Wizards' 39 second-half points. They did not have help when the season was on the line. This was in some respects a reprise of last season's final game when the Wizards' bench amassed only 5 points in a Game 7 loss to the Celtics. The Wizards' second unit was outscored 34-20 by Toronto Game 6. The Wizards' bench was better this season, but how much better? It's certainly not on the level of Toronto's. The Wizards and Raptors have taken very different philosophies towards the draft in recent years. The Wizards have traded 3 of their first-round picks for veterans that can help them win now, like Morris, Marcin Gortat and Bojan Bogdanovic, who left in free agency this past summer. Those deals have all worked out to varying degrees, and could be argued as smart moves. The Raptors, on the other hand, have held on to those first-round picks and flooded their bench with young, high-ceiling players who Dwayne Casey has coached up to contribute very quickly. That approach has worked very well for them. Wright, Siakam, Poeltl and starting forward Anunoby were all selected in the first round in the past 3 years. The only first-round pick the Wizards can boast during that stretch is Kelly Oubre Jr., who was Porter's replacement in Game 6 and had an uneven series, all things considered. More depth, particularly when it comes to scorers, would allow the Wizards to overcome the loss of a player like Porter's. They were able to do so for much of the regular season, as Wall missed 41 games. but their depth couldn't earn them more than the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, and that contributed to their early demise. What ultimately did them in more specifically was a problem that plagued them all throughout their head-scratching regular season that was characterized by profound highs and lows. They stopped passing and playing as a collective unit. The Wizards, who turned the ball over 14 times, had only 12 assists as a team. That's only a few more than the 9.6 that Wall averaged during the regular season. It was the fewest assists in a game for the Wizards since Dec. 4 and their fewest in a playoff game since May 9, 2014 in their second-round series against the Pacers, 12 assists. That speaks for itself, Morris said. The fourth quarter was when they were at their worst. They had only 3 assists in the frame and shot 25%. They scored 14 points as a team, their worst postseason quarter also since that Pacers game in 2014. They hadn't scored 14 or less in any quarter since February 28 against the Warriors. Some of the things that happened in the fourth quarter have been happening throughout the year, head coach Scott Brooks said. We just had trouble scoring, making shots, we turned the ball over, we gave up offensive rebounds. In crunch time, the Wizards' offense was shut off like a faucet. Wall and Beal were left to do everything on their own, and they didn't have the wherewithal or the legs to pull it off. The Raptors had too much artillery and the Wizards were overmatched when it counted most. NBC Sports Washington is on Apple News. Favorite us. The Washington Wizards lost to the Toronto Raptors 102-92 on Friday night in Game 6 of their first-round playoff series. Here's analysis of what went down. It's all over, the long, thick, strange and eventful ride that was the 2017-18 season for the Washington Wizards came to a quiet end on Friday night, as they fell to the Toronto Raptors in Game 6 and did so in familiar fashion. The Wizards' 2016-17 ended largely because the supporting cast around John Wall and Bradley Beal did not do their part in the decisive game. The same thing happened again. Wall had 23 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds. Beal had 32 points. But their third leading scorer, Markieff Morris, amassed only 12 points. Wall and Beal scored 30 of the Wizards' 39 second-half points. Washington was down a key player, as Otto Porter was injured, but that is a tough way to lose. They didn't move the ball like they know they should have. The result was just 12 team assists and a 40.5% shooting night. This is the first time they have lost in the first round in the Wall and Beal era. This defeat snapped a streak of 8 straight home playoff wins for the Wizards. The Wizards will enter another off-season with questions about the supporting cast around their 2 star guards. Otto was out. The Wizards played this game without one of their best players, as earlier in the day news broke that Porter would be out indefinitely following a procedure on his left leg to relieve blood pressure from a contusion he suffered sometime in Game 4. Though Porter was limited for much of the series due to injuries to both legs, he left big shoes to fill. Kelly Oubre Jr. got the start in Porter's place, and head coach Scott Brooks gave Tomas Satoransky an extended opportunity as his backup. It was the first time this series that Satoransky played extended minutes since Game 2. The Raptors, conversely, got an important piece back for Game 6 as point guard Fred VanVleet made his return after missing the first 5 games of the series with a right shoulder injury. It was clear early on what the Raptors had been missing, as VanVleet entered and immediately made an impact. VanVleet found Jonas Valanciunas with an alley-oop lob in his first minute of action and soon after that knocked down his first jumper. He finished with 5 points, 4 assists and 4 rebounds. VanVleet played crucial minutes in the fourth quarter and helped take pressure off their own star guards, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. DeRozan had 16 points, his lowest total of the series, but they still had enough to win. Beal was back. Beal had an up-and-down series. He was held in check in the first 2 games, both losses, then unstoppable in Games 3 and 4, both wins. The Wizards got the good version of Beal in Game 6, as he came out firing from a long range. Beal had 14 points in the first half and scored 18 in the second. It was Beal's 18th career postseason game with 25 or more points. With Porter out, Beal's scoring was extra important and he certainly did his part. The rest of the team, however, barely held up their end of the bargain. Oubre had 3 points and shot 1 for 6. Marcin Gortat had 2 points and 7 rebounds. The bench combined for 20 points compared to 34 for Toronto. If it weren't for Wall and Beal, who logged 40 and 43 minutes, respectively, the Wizards wouldn't have been in this game. To a certain extent that is always the case, but they were a 2-man show on this particular night. The Raptors' depth allowed DeRozan to log only 33 minutes and Lowry only 31. Scott did his thing. One guy who did step up, at least early, was Mike Scott. He came off the bench and lit it up with 8 points in his first 5 minutes on 3 for 4 shooting. Scott ended up with 8, however, as he cooled off in the second half. It was another example of what Scott did so well this season. He provided instant defense off the Wizards' bench, and it will probably get him paid handsomely this summer. With little salary cap room to work with, it might be difficult for the Wizards to match Scott's price. Even if they can't, the signing was a boon for their front office. They took a chance on him with a veteran's minimum contract, and he thoroughly outplayed the deal. Up next, the offseason. The Wizards' season was a roller coaster, and the end result was a disappointment. It will be interesting to see what happens this summer, whether changes are made to their front office, and most notably what happens to their roster. Will they make an aggressive move or bring the usuals back and chalk their 2017-18 season up to injuries? We shall see. NBC Sports Washington is on Apple News.